Now, today I have a very, very interesting topic, and it's the gospel of love. Okay, and I'm going to start with a very, very serious question. But I was going to actually make a joke before, but then when Darren prayed for me, he says, "Let every single word out of my lips come only from God." So I'm like, "Oh, can I make a joke then?" I was like, "Wait, I got a very serious question: red or green M&Ms?" Right? I was going to say something really dumb, right? But then after Darren prayed, I was like, "Oh man, maybe I can't say that." But then I thought to myself again, I said, probably God has a better sense of humor than me, right? So if I really thought deeply, I could probably get a better joke. But I didn't. So I'm going to go straight into the question. I didn't get a better joke, so so you got to bear with me right now. So I'm going to have a very big question for everyone here, okay? The question I give everyone here today is this. Are you satisfied? Or is it enough? Okay, now I'm not talking about life, because that's like a really it's too vague and too general, because you can start any sermon like that and of course everyone's gonna be like, no, I want more, whatever it is, right? But I'm gonna talk about faith, or I'm talking about the gospel. Are you satisfied with the gospel, or is the gospel enough for you, right? Is it enough that Jesus died on the cross, right? Is it enough? And the answer I'm gonna give you today is it shouldn't be. As crazy as that sounds, I'm going to say it shouldn't be enough and you shouldn't be satisfied with it, right? See, the one thing I want everyone to do today is I want you guys to really think about the gospel and think about what you've been believing in, or the reason that makes you believe, right? Or the reason that says, oh, this is why I'm here. And I want you to think about the first step you ever took when you accepted the gospel all the way to where you are right now, and look at yourself and say, okay, now, from the very beginning, there was this power, this first love, this great, it was amazing. And I was like, oh, going to church every single week. And then as time went on, what happens? As time goes on, that feeling kind of dissipates, right? And your faith kind of grows stagnant. And you kind of start to lose that feeling you had before. And you wonder to yourself sometimes, was I really that fine? What did I see in the gospel? Or what was so satisfying in the past? What was so satisfying? But now I'm here at this position, and it almost feels like it's not enough, right? It's almost like kind of thinking about a house, okay? So whenever, there's lots of houses you build, but whenever you look at a house, there's three things you have to think about, right? The first thing you have to think about is, the house, what about the house is, when was it built? Right? Because you want to look at how good the house is. When was it built? What was it built with? How was it built? And what was the cost? Right? That's when you analyze a house. You say, oh, this is a good house, or this is a bad house or a good house. Right? The gospel too, I want you guys to start analyzing the gospel also. So the first question I give to everyone here is, what does gospel mean? Besides good news. Right? What does it mean? Gospel. What does that mean? Because the number one answer I've heard is the words of God, right? The words of God. So when you hear about the words of God, it's like, oh yeah, it's about the words of God, isn't it? But if you think about it even more carefully, to make it more specific, the gospel means what? It means the words of God at each time. At each time, right? So let's think about this, the words of God at each time. So if I said to you, what was the gospel at the time of Noah? What was the gospel? Gospel was what? Flood's coming, right? Build the ark, flood's coming, bring the people in and get out, right? What about the gospel at the time of Abraham? Don't say kill your son, please. Right? Kill your son. No, it wasn't kill your son. It was actually leave your father, right? Leave your father and go somewhere else. And then it was kill your son, but still, right? That was the gospel at that time. You move a little bit forward, you have the time of Moses. What was the gospel at the time of Moses? What is it? Free the Israelites, right? Free them from where? From Egypt, right? So free, there's get out, right? So he leaves Egypt, and what's the next thing that happens? The next gospel is, part the Red Sea, right? And as you see, at every time and every moment, there's a gospel or a new gospel that keeps coming depending on that time, okay? It all depends on that time. Because at the time of Jesus, or the gospel that we know of, the gospel of Jesus is about what? The gospel of Jesus is about the cross, about dying for your sins, right? The sacrifice for you, and that is the gospel that we live with right now. Now, if we're to get into the history of the gospel, right? I'm going to tell you why I want you to think about not being satisfied and not thinking of this gospel as enough. I'm going to tell you why. Right? I'm not going to say it's not enough. I'm not going to say it's not enough, but you have to believe it's not enough. Right? What Jesus did was enough for that time. But the real thing you have to think about right now is it really enough? Or does God want you to believe that it's enough? Okay? Now, what does that mean? So let's take a look at the Old Testament, right? The Old Testament was preached all the way until Jesus came, right? And everyone was told what in the Old Testament? Wait for something better, right? You got to wait for something better. So everyone in the Old Testament is all about, don't worry, Jesus is coming. God will come and save you. You won't go through pain. You won't go through suffering. And what does that bring everyone? It brings everyone hope, right? Now, what kind of hope is it? It's like that hope, like, the lottery right now, right? What's the lottery at right now, Jamie? It's $1.6 billion. Okay, 1.6, right? So I was reading upon this, and I was like going, well, is it really 1.5 billion, 1.6 billion? They're like, well, if you take all taxes out, you'll only get 535 million, right? So I was like, what a waste. I'm not going to buy a ticket. Is that worth it? But yeah, you'll lose $1 billion from taxes, right? So all you're left was a measly 530 million. But even if you win that 530 million, right? It's just 530 million. Think about this. Imagine you bought a ticket. And the chances of winning is like 1 in what? Like 292 billion. It's like, it's like how many times over is that of the world population of 7 billion? How many times over is that? 40-something times, right? So even if the chances are so ridiculous, when Tuesday starts getting closer and you have that ticket in your hand, what do you feel? You start thinking about the things you're going to buy, right? You start talking to your friends. Hey, man, if I win, I'm going to pay you back that $50 I owe you. I'm going to pay you back. I'm going to pay you back. And you might even give you 51, right? You start talking about what you're going to pay people back. You go to your mom and say, Mom, I bought a lottery ticket, and if I win, I'm going to buy you a house. Right? I'm going to buy you a house. I'm going to get you things that you've always wanted. I'm going to buy you a car. I'm going to buy this. And what happens is when you start thinking about this lottery, and even though it's so far off, and the chances of you winning is next to zero. It is next to zero, right? It's pretty much next to zero. They said that the chance, you have a better chance of becoming the president of the United States. And I'm not even a U.S. citizen, and there's probably a better chance for me becoming president of the United States than for winning the lottery, okay? So you think about this, like, it's a crazy stat. But the thing you have to think about here is this. When you have that hope, when you have that ticket, how do you feel? It's amazing. It's the most amazing feeling, and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be the, wow. And you even just thinking about the things you buy, the feeling is so great. It's actually monumental, even though none of you in this room, even if you bought 1,000 tickets each, would win. I guarantee, I guarantee you, right? If you win, buy 1,000 tickets, and if you win, you win, right? I'm not going to do anything about it, right? The chances we're not going to win anything, right? This is what the people in the Old Testament had, was what? They had a hope. They're looking forward to something better, right? That was the gospel at that time, was there's someone coming. God is going to come to save everyone, and with that hope, everyone said death is okay, right? Going through this is okay, because when the Christ comes, we're going to take everything back. All the people we lost, all the things that we lost, this pain and suffering is not going to mean anything when the Christ comes back. There's an excitement for something new. There's a hope for something better, and that was the gospel of the Old Testament time. Now, here's the problem, right? The problem that happens at that time when Jesus came is that there were a lot of people that were not thinking about something better. They weren't thinking about something better, right? Because now I'm going to reference this to us right now. People at the time of the Old Testament when Jesus came, they weren't thinking about something better. They weren't thinking about losing this suffering, getting over these things, right? They were actually caught up in their own lives. And in their life that they're living right now, they're not thinking, oh, it's going to be so great. I can't wait for the Lord to come back. They're just sitting there like, why is my life so difficult? Why is it so hard? right? Man, why did that person say that to me? Why do I fight with my mom? Why do I fight with my dad, right? Some people are like, we fight with our friends and family, and church actually isn't a really big hope for us. It isn't. Why? Because church should be giving you hope because there's something better going to happen in the future, but not a single people now, back at that time in the Old Testament time, they weren't looking forward to something better, and they became stagnant. And what's it like? It's like maintaining. Right, what's maintaining mean? Maintaining means you have the same machine and all you do is make sure it runs a long time. But guess what happens is, as the machine is running and as it continues to break down, does it ever work the same as it was brand new? It's like clothes, right? You have your favorite clothes, you put in the laundry about 5 times. What do your clothes look like? Right? It looks like this, right? It looks like this, right? Like, darn it, right? Why is it always wrinkly on the bottom, right? It's like crazy, right? Like, oh, I can never get this crease out. I don't know what the heck's going on, right? You have new clothes, and when you wash them like 5 or 6 times, they're never new anymore, right? And that's why sometimes, I do this sometimes, is you don't want to wash it. Because it's like in perfect mode, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't sweat that much today. I just played soccer, so, I'm going to hang it back up here, and I'm just going to Febreze it for a bit, right? Put some cologne, some perfume and stuff like that. Oh, what's that? No, that's not a sweat mark. No, it's okay. No one will notice it, right? And we keep those things. It's crazy, right? It's with shoes too, right? You have shoes, right? And what happens is after a while, these white shoes turn into like off-white brown with smudges on the side, and you sit there and, you try to wipe them off to the point that you kind of give up because there's just too many smudges and just doesn't come out, right? And you think to yourself, I could buy some new ones, but I probably have to win the lottery for that, right? So we're kind of sitting there like, oh, right? And what happens is you kind of lose it, right? And you get used to it, and instead you just kind of maintain, right? What God is asking from us is not asking us to maintain faith, right? Because maintaining is keeping the same machine. That same machine is eventually going to die no matter what. The clothes you have on right now, eventually, I hope you're not wearing it in the next 2 years, right? 2 years later, I hope there's a new one, right? Please pray for me to win the lottery, okay? Right? So what happens is you're going to hope that, you're not going to wear it because it's just not going to last, right? Which means what? You need to replace it. But by that time, what if you have nothing to replace it with? What God is asking us from your faith, what does it mean to keep hope? What does it mean not to maintain is you need to upgrade. You got to keep upgrading the machine, right? The machine itself has to upgrade, but instead you keep the same machine and all you do is maintain it, right? Put a little bit of oil in there. Oh, it's a little smudge, and just get like that Tide stick and you kind of wipe that Tide stick right there until it comes out, right? That's what we do. You have to make it new, right? This is where the hope comes in. This is where you're seeing something in the future that was never seen before. People in the Old Testament time were constantly told that a new gospel was coming. Right? You gotta think about that. A new gospel, which means new words for that time. A new gospel of love was coming, and it will be so much better than what you have right now. And then Jesus comes, and very few people actually believe in him, and that new gospel comes, and what happens to people? Because they weren't really looking forward to it, they thought that what they had was enough, and they couldn't accept the new thing. Now, my question to you is, what does it have to do with right now? What does it have to do with right now? What does it mean you can't be satisfied with the gospel you have right now? What does it mean you can't be satisfied with the gospel of the cross? What does it mean you can't say it's enough that Jesus died for you? Is that enough? And the answer is, it was enough for that time. So my question to you is, does God say there's something better coming or not? That's a question you have to think about. Is there anything that comes after Christ, right? And the answer is yes. Jesus himself says, guess what? I'm coming again. There is another gospel, right? There is a new gospel a new time that is greater and better than what you have right now. It's something to look forward to, right? If you have something that you're looking forward to, you're so ready. You're prepared. You want to do something, right? It's like, what is the one thing everyone looks forward to the most? Is like that that first date with that guy or girl, right? That first date, like, oh my goodness, and you have such hope in it. It's not like you're gonna wear like your like sweatpants and a tank top with slippers, right? When you meet this person on the first date, what do? You look for that shirt that looks brand new, but it's not, because you Tide-sticked it all the time and you put a lot of perfume and like cologne on it. You take that shirt out, he's like, oh, this is it, right? And you put that on, you look in the mirror, and what do? You say, I gotta get a haircut. No, right? You gotta change your hair, right? You change other stuff and you get yourself so prepared and ready. So what happens next is you are so ready to meet that guy, right? You get yourself ready more than anything else. Because what if it is, think about this. Imagine it's the same guy, like from like kindergarten, has always been there, he's like, he always looks like he just woke up. He's got hair like always like this all the time, right? What if it's that same guy? If it's the same guy as the past, what do you think? It's not a big deal. Then you wear your sweatpants. Then you put on like a regular tank top. Then you wear your slippers and sandals. You might head to McDonald's if you got coupons, right? Don't worry, they got great deals on McDonald's app. Just want to let you know that, right? Yeah, you might do it if you got coupon. Everyone knows what I'm talking about here, right? Yeah, I was like, this is the daily savings. Double hamburger for $1.99 or whatever it is, right? I only know that because I almost get it every day, right? Right? So what happens is if it's the same as before, then what happens, you don't look forward to it and you don't change, right? What you have to understand is the gospel of love that you receive right now it's not the end. This is not the best part, because you have to think about this to yourself. Is this the greatest what I'm going through right now? What you know about Christ, what you know about God, is there nothing better than it is right now? Are all the mysteries solved? Do you have every answer to every problem just by reading the Bible? Or how many of you pray and you're like, oh, God, I'm going through this. And then God's like going, well, the answer is B. It's like, oh, thank you, God. This is a perfect question on the multiple choice, right? You don't get the answers. There's no answers, right? And you're stuck, and every time you read the Bible, you're not even sure what it's saying. And then when you go check on the internet, hey, what does Hebrews chapter 9, verse 28 mean? How many different entries are there for Hebrews chapter 9, verse 28? There's like millions, and they're all saying different things, and you're wondering to yourself, which one's the answer? Where am I going? Is this it? Is this everything? Really? Is this it? If this was it, do you think there'd be a second coming? If this was it, do you think Jesus would talk about a new time? For references, if there's a chapter you want to read, in the New Testament, there is one chapter that speaks about a newer time. There's one chapter in the New Testament that talks about the next testament, that talks about the next gospel, the next time. What is it? For your reference, it's Revelation chapter 20. Revelation chapter 20 is the one chapter that speaks about the next gospel or the next time period. And what does it say? It's the millennium or the 1,000 years. It talks about this time for 1,000 years where things will be so much better, where everyone becomes kings and queens, where the book of life is opened and the people of Christ are judged and they go to heaven. It's the only chapter. Everything else refers to what's happening at the time of Jesus, but only Revelation chapter 20 talks about the next time. It says they're the next time. And you know what? What's even crazier? There was actually a hint from the Old Testament. There was a hint from the Old Testament that the time of Jesus wasn't it, that there's another time to look forward to. We're going to take a look at this scripture today. It's Isaiah chapter 54, verse 5, right? And look what it says here. This is from the Old Testament. It gives us a hint of what things are supposed to be, right? And in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 5, you look at the screen, it says, for your husband is your maker, his name is Yahweh of hosts, and the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. Now the question here is this. How the heck is this a hint that there's a second coming? How can this be a hint? Why? Because when Jesus came, he says, if you believe in me, what do you become? You become sons of God, right? And the girls might think it's unfair because I don't want to be a son, but back then, you'd want to be a son. Trust me on this one. Back in the time of Jesus, you want to be a boy. You want to be a son, right? You want to be the firstborn, where half the inheritance goes to the firstborn and the rest of the children split the other half. You want to be the firstborn son. And Jesus says, if you believe in me, you're going to be a son, right? So you're like, okay, well, wait a second. In Isaiah, what does it say? It says, it's not about being sons. What is your maker supposed to be? Your husband. Your husband is your maker. That's the end goal, the end game. You know what I mean? So we got some kids in the back, right? The interesting thing, I love kids, but you always know when kids have like an end game, right? So it's like, Daddy, I love you. He's like, what do you want? What do you want, right? Daddy, you're so handsome. And Daddy, you're so tall compared to me. Daddy, you, good, right? And these kids will say things to their dad when they finally realize the power of the words, Daddy, I love you. And when they realize the power of those words, they'll use it for everything. And you know what? The crazy part is, it works every time. It doesn't make a difference. There's an end game, right? The end game isn't to tell your dad, I just love you. That's not the end game, however much we wish. Why? Because, adults still do it too to their parents when we need something sometimes. Like, Mom, you've been such a great mom. And I don't know what I'd do without you. I probably wouldn't even be born. And she's like, no, it's true. You wouldn't be born if I wasn't here. It's like, I know, and that's why I'm so moved, right? And you want something. There's an end game, right? You got to think about this, right? We all have an end game in our minds, and it's something much further ahead, and that's why it's worth to try and say, Daddy, I love you. Chicken fingers? Right? Right? You got to think about this, right? That's the thing. We have to realize there's got to be an end game, because if there isn't an end game and it just ends there, then we're not sure what we should be doing at that time. And you know what? To be honest, it gets to a point, think honestly right now in your life of faith, there's a point where it's not enough. There is. There's a point you're no longer satisfied. Why? Because you keep hearing the same message over and over again. Well, you know what? Jesus died for you. And he rose again. And you're like, I heard that 10,000 times already. And you know what? After about the 7th time, it doesn't help. I can't feel it anymore. I don't know what it means, right? What does it mean? Well, what was the point? What was the end game? What was the end game of death, right? The end game of death wasn't for you to remain as a child and just sit there asking for your dad to pick you up. The end game wasn't for you to just go through pain and your dad just comes and fix everything, right? Because eventually there comes a point when you grow up. Because if you're 70 and your kid's 50 and he says, pick me up, I don't think so, right? If you're 50 and your kid is 40, oh no, you wouldn't have a kid at 10, sorry. If you're 50 and your kid is 30 or 25, right? What you're gonna pay all their debts off because they spent their credit cards, right? So Alexi, I met him last week. You want to live with your kids until they're 40 and 50? Oh yeah, you can't say it out loud. All right, they're right there. All right, they're smiling at least. Right, they didn't get it. It's okay. All right, but honestly, there's an end game. The end game isn't for your kids to stay as kids. The end game isn't for them to take care of them all the time. The end game is for them to grow up, to raise them and say, these are the people I raised, right? So they too will get married and have a family, and they'll be happy. And there'll be people that will be satisfied with life. There's an end game beyond what we have right now. Your end game now, if you look at the gospel and what God preached and what Jesus preached, it didn't end at just being children. Why? Because if it's a gospel of love, you have to think about this really carefully. If it's a gospel about love, then the most important thing is love. And if the most important thing is love, then what is the highest love? It's not father and child. It's not. Or else everyone would marry their father. Sorry, right? Everyone would marry their mother if that was the end game. It's not. The highest point of love is not the parent and child. Why? Because one thing is guaranteed is eventually they grow up, and if they stay too long in the house, you kick them out. You do. And after you kick them out, it's just you and your wife or you and your husband for the rest until the end. That's an end game. It's not forever, right? Forever in this lifetime, in this world, is not parent and child. Forever is you and your husband or you and your wife. You're supposed to be there till the end. That's the point. That's what love is. Love was never meant to be just you and your children. It was never meant to be. That's the middle game. The end game is the greatest and highest level of love. And that's what you look forward to. Because none of us look forward to living with our parents. But by the time you're 18, how many people have moved out by the time they're 18, 19, out of their house? Right? Okay. Just the Asian stayed at home. That's okay. That's normal, right? Yeah, for me, I moved out at 19. I moved out of my parents' house and went to my uncle's house. Still moved out, but hey, right? I went from my parents' house to my uncle's house, and it's the exact same thing. My aunt was cooking, and my aunt did my laundry. As crazy as that sounds, right? My aunt's like taking a spoon, putting it in my mouth at 19. Actually, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, right. So, if you think about this very carefully, right? It's not the end game, right? When you move out because you don't want to be there anymore, not because you don't like your parents or you don't love your parents, because there's something greater. There's something better. When God is looking at you and He wants that relationship with you, yes, He wants you to be a child for that time, right? Because it's good for your child who's 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 or 15 to be your child. That's fine. But the time comes, the gospel with the definition of the words of God at each time is we grow up. And God says, for your maker is your husband. And you have to think about this really deeply. What kind of life is it, right, if you remain a child and the highest level of love you will ever get is between you and your parents? How many people would be satisfying? And the answer is 0. We all look for something greater. What kind of greater? Greater love. If this is a gospel of love, do not be satisfied as a child. Don't be satisfied as a child. Why? Because the good book, the Bible tells us there is a destination, there's an end game that is greater and higher than what we have right now. It's not the $1.6 billion lottery. Well, it is, but it's like there's no taxes. You get to keep everything, right? And we have to realize right now is this gospel of love, right? This gospel is enough for you right now, right? And this gospel is something that we have to say, what does God want? He wants us to look forward to a newer and greater gospel. And that's not wrong. Why? Because that's like the people in the Old Testament like saying, oh no, Moses is enough for me. And when Jesus comes, no, it's okay, I'll stay with Moses. It was never meant to be that way. It was never meant to stay with Moses, right? But who are we waiting for? We're waiting for the same person to come back. We're waiting for the Christ. And He comes again and He says, we have to move on. You can't think and live the same way, in the same machine you had in the past, and just keep maintaining it. Because eventually, it busts. It breaks down. That's what happened in the Old Testament for people who didn't follow Christ. And it'll happen again for those who don't follow when the Lord's second coming comes. There's 1,000-year coming. 1,000-year, just this, they call it the wedding banquet. But this is something that you have to look forward to and prepare for as the greatest thing. Because there's got to be something better than what we have right now. You can't be satisfied with what you have right now. There is something greater. It's bigger. And it's more powerful. Why? Because it's a greater love. So I hope that everyone here too, as you've heard today's message, I hope that in your minds, you've thought about this like a little bit more deeply and said, where am I right now? Am I satisfied, or is it enough for me just to be where I am? Or are you looking forward to something greater? Right? Has everyone ever asked you that question? Is Jesus enough? Like, blasphemy, right? But no, this is Jesus' own words. I'm coming back. Let's get ready. There's going to be something better, right? So look forward to something greater and better. And I hope that all of us here too will not remain as children, but we will look forward to a time when we become husband and wife with God. Let's pray. Beloved God, we're very grateful. We're thankful for all that you've done for us today. You've shown us so many things. You've shown us, Lord God, that what we have right now, is it really enough? Is it enough to just be with my parents? Is it enough just to live with my dad and my mom? But even we know, as beings of love, that just staying at that relationship is not enough. We look for something greater and we go outside of our house. And in the same way too, we move to a newer house with our husbands and our wives. And I pray that all of us here too will not stay in the same house, but we will move out and we'll move to the new time and the new age where a gospel will be given once again so that we can live as brides of a new history. We thank you so much for all that you've done. Bless every person here. Let us think deeper about our faith and about our life. And I pray, Lord, that you'll bless everyone so that we can take the first steps. We thank you so much for all that you've done. We pray all these things in the name of our beloved, living Lord Christ. Amen.
He can take you where you wanna go. He can take you where you wanna go. He can take you where you wanna go. He can show you what you wanna know.